when I was a practicum student and also a client. The Rogers group that I was a student with were doing research. And I, being a philosopher, Rogers thought it was interesting to have a philosopher in the practicum. That's how I got in there. So I didn't know what research looked like. I didn't know, was it machinery or where was it? And I discovered that they were tape recording and taking little bits from the tapes and classifying what the client was talking about. And so whenever the client would mention a therapist, that would go into this pile. And when the client was talking about him or herself, that article is in the days when the grammar required the client him, you'll notice. So it's a long time ago. It would go into self. So everything was classified either talking about yourself or talking about the relationship. The other part was about the past or the present, you know, my husband or my father. And they had just found, to their dismay, that it didn't make any difference, didn't correlate with anything. They had thought of this talking about the therapist as the relationship. And the relationship was supposed to be this huge important thing in therapy, and it didn't correlate whatsoever with anything, with success, with all the different measures that they had. And that was bad, you know. The group would talk about how that can't be and what and all that. Meanwhile, I was a client, and after the first, I don't know, took a while, but after a while, I noticed that when I walked in the door, I felt different. Long before I walked across the room and sat down, you know, just walking in. And I thought, that's the relationship. And they don't know about that because they're classifying talking about the therapist. I was so shy, I never talked about the therapist. I didn't even call him by name, which everybody else did. I don't know that I would ever have said, how old are you, or anything. So from there, the philosophy that I was working on was already that whatever you may say from any moment of living, the moment of living is vastly richer than what you say. What you say might be some kind of true, it might be expressive, or it might not be, but what is actually going on is an implicit texture. And then what the words I'm using to describe that, those words are themselves in the same position, if you can follow that turn that I'm making. So even philosophically, to talk about experience is already like that. So when you call it experience, that brings up all the things you think experience are. Forget it. It's not experience. Well, what is it? Well, it's not a what. It's a texture. Well, what's texture? If you're a philosopher, you know that to begin with, none of the words work. Then you can start fresh and say, well, if the word connects in a certain way that you can experience, and there's that word experience again, so you don't mean experience. Well, what do you mean? Well, connect. Well, how do words connect with what? You have to refer directly to it. Then, of course, you know what I mean. If the words, then yes, and if they're, then no, right? So there's always a directly referring that's necessary to make any sense from what you're living. Now, there are other things you can do. You can describe somebody else. You can quote a book. You can say, I believe so-and-so is wise, therefore I repeat what they're saying. That's different. But even there, you wouldn't do it if it didn't have some kind of experiential something for you. So where I want to lead to is the relationship, the interaction, we can call it, in therapy, which I think is the most important part. Because everything that else that happens inside that. The relating that is going on, from my point of view, is not what is being said. What is being said comes from there, perhaps, or it can also cover it up, or it can have nothing to do with it. But in speaking, one is alive in a certain way. And so if last night at home, alone in my autistic space, I worked on some problem, and I used certain words, and I told myself about it in a certain way, and I made a little progress. When I come to you and I tell you about it, in the very same words, it's a different way of being alive. Does that make sense? Now, I believe that I said something that you all know. And yet I think saying it is some kind of important move that I'm making. Because I'm going past all the theoretical concepts, and I'll be right back to them. We need them. But I'm going past all the theoretical concepts, and I'm saying it's really what those concepts speak from, or speak to, or let you find, something like that.
Could you say that last part again, because we had several bells.
Oh, okay.
The doorbell and
This will end.
okay. Just say that last part again. Everybody, if everybody will turn their phones off.
If I have to say it again, I'll say it better.
The phones will get credit.
I'm trying to say that that theoretical concepts are very, very important and helpful, but I'm using them in a different way than they're usually used. I'm saying they're all of them false, including what I'm saying. And you see how that follows already from what I was saying, because if you take what I say literally, then we're no better off than taking any other theory literally. If you allow a theory to bring something forward from how you're living, or how the client is living, or how the interaction is going, then the theory works. And if you use theory like that, you can use them all. The more theories you know, the better off you are, the more things you will notice, because the theory helps you notice things, and it helps you do things. And we'll come back to it maybe. If Lynn and I decided 2 weeks ago that a theory can be a mother also. So I'm putting that on the agenda. So I am very, very much elevating theory. But I'm also saying that if you think the theory can substitute for what's there, or that any theoretical inference can be correct, then I think that's false. So when I feel that I know something and the client doesn't yet and is struggling there, then I wait, because I like it to come from them. But then if they're going round and round in circles, after a while I don't feel that I'm interrupting anything valuable, then I may try it. I may say, does it do anything to say da-da-da-da? And I don't always use the same formula, but I'm always really asking, does it do anything to? And then if it doesn't, away with it, out. Don't explain to me why it doesn't. Just, okay, it didn't. But if it does, something more finely tuned comes, something more specific comes, something with the flavor, the intricacy, the funny quality of this person comes. So whenever I say to her, especially at the beginning, after a while they know me, but in the beginning when I say to a client, you know, would it do anything to say this? And they say, yes, that's exactly right. Then I wait for a minute for what more comes. And if nothing more comes, I say, well, nothing I say can ever be exactly right. You know, so go see what's right about that and what isn't. And I wait until something comes with that quality, that textured, funny, futzy, wrinkly stuff that comes directly from there. Okay, so back to the interaction, the relationship to me is the living that is going on. Even if the content is exactly the same, or even if you're totally silent as a therapist, the living that is happening for you and for the client is obviously completely different than when the client is reviewing the same content alone, and of course also when you're reviewing the same content alone. Just imagine the client leaves and now you relax, and you're all different than you were, and you go over the same content. Okay, so then one spot to look to discuss maybe is a spot where you can really tell the difference, because there are times when what we say is contradictory to what actually the interaction is. And there are certain funny things that can happen there. So I once had a client who in the first interview said to me, I always have to know who's going to be the active one. Am I going to be the active one here, or are you? I spent years trying to think of how I should have answered that. Do you see why? Because almost anything I ever thought of to say meant that I was the active one. And of course I wanted him to be. But if I was going to say, no, you're going to be the active one, then of course I was the one who decided what goes on here. And it took me a long time to finally say, I could have said, you're putting me on the spot with that, or something like that. You want to hear from me right now, right at the start, or something of that kind, which would have honored the fact that he was being active in that moment.
What does it matter?
Right?
What does it matter which one's active? Perhaps.
Well, that too. I mean, I often thought, well, ask him a question. But no, then I'm interrogating him. All right, tell me why you're asking that. We need to notice as therapists that almost everything that we do in old-fashioned kind of therapy is therapeutic for us as therapists and not for the client. For the client, it repeats the deadly experience of being a child and being told what to do, going to school and being told for 6 or 7 hours every single day, being corrected by all the other people, being oppressed by her husband or her mother or her sister or whoever it is. And so if the therapist mainly tells things, that's the kind of interaction we mainly don't want. Now sometimes, sure, that's okay, but not mainly. So we'll come back there, but finally to say, and you don't have to argue with this if you don't want to, I am also saying that insofar as Freudians produce Freudian-type patients and Jungians produce Jungian-type heads and behaviorists produce behavior-type shaped people, it would follow that nobody is safe to go to a therapist. It has to be true that, yeah, there might be differences, but you find your own way of being more alive and fuller and larger and more forward and stronger and happier and more able to do things your own way, regardless of whether your therapist is a this or a that. And I also think you probably all agree with that. But what follows from that is that most of the language we're still using is wrong. That the client's larger self that we're building is not a combination of what the therapist says and what the client says. That we're cooperating together, sure, we're co-creating an interpretation, yes, but we're not co-creating the client. Okay, having said that, I say one more thing. I'm with Lynn in what she said, which I always say, focusing is not therapy. Focusing is an important tool or strand which makes every therapy better, because focusing is getting down there where a person, a client, or anybody feels something very concretely there, but it isn't clear yet what it is. Or it may be clear what it's about, or one thing about it may be clear, or it may, I may have presented a very clear picture of what my problem is, but then I still have the problem. So when I go inside and if I were to say to myself, is your problem solved? My body would say, mm. And focusing is nothing but staying there for a little bit. Little steps come there. So you can improve about half of your clients or patients that you see simply by inviting them to come here sometimes. So if they're talking and they say something really significant, if once in a while you say, what does that make for you here? Half of them will go in there and the whole thing will deepen. the other half will say, "What?" And you say, "Never mind, that's okay. You were just saying that your sister something," and you go on wherever they were. And finally, what I want to say is that even if somebody were just to do focusing, and this is one of the problems we have, even if somebody is just a focusing teacher and not a therapist, even if what is going on is totally silent, everything I've said still applies. The silent going in there into myself in complete silence happens in the relationship with this person, who might be a stranger or who might be somebody I know. When I sit down to focus, if that's my wife, my inner being takes on a certain shape before I even start. And it's not as if she would interrupt me or tell me anything. It's just that I know her so well that living with her, I can get certain kind of focusing, but I can't do the same thing that I can do with my focusing partner of many years, where I get deeper. Before I start, I mean as I start. So that, like last week, as I recall, at the start, I said hello, I said something, da-da-da, and I said it's my turn or whatever, and then I went to the bathroom and all the things I had focused on that morning started to move. And I came back and I said, okay, I got my steps already. Right? Because it's in that interaction that I am alive in my body, even if nothing is said. So it would be a complete mistake to think of focusing as an intrapsychic process. The concept of an intrapsychic process is an old mistake. Okay? So there. Now I've generated a question and I did my job. What would
Now,
you want questions?
Anybody?
There's one right. Well, it doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment or anything.
For a moment, I just had this feeling that maybe really there's no such thing. I mean, there's something we call an intrapsychic process.
Yes.
But there, in fact, it doesn't exist.
There is no such thing.
Independently
Right.
of
Right.
the
That's right. There is a self-responding process, which is what people think of as intrapsychic. And it is true that in responding to yourself alone, you can get to things that you might not get to in interaction. And in an interaction, you can get to things you can't get to by responding to yourself alone. Each of those can be more. But to respond to yourself is not an intrapsychic process. First, it's not, because what you find in here is how you're alive, which is to say in situations with other people or away from other people, but still that involves other people. So there is no internal stuff. It's always how you're living in an interactional way. And secondly, responding to yourself alone is not intrapsychic, because the attitudes that you need to respond to yourself are the same ones that you need from another person. And so we in teaching focusing have a whole huge chapter of it called The Focusing Attitudes. What are they? Well, they're all the same attitudes that you need to respond to another person. You know, give it space, listen to it, don't jump on it, don't judge it, let it breathe, sit next to it, let it tell you what it is. All those same things. So it's very interactional to respond to yourself, as well as the stuff is all interactional stuff. Yeah, there is no such thing as intrapsychic. It's a mistake.
You can just speak. You don't have to
Yes.
raise your hand, and whether you want to also say what you find on the other side of the door, or ask a question, anything as well.
I could say on the other side of the focusing door is everything again, only deeper. So there you find your childhood and spirituality and every other different thing. So I don't want to call all that focusing. Focusing is just this little door. So focusing is just spending the time saying, and thinking something and checking and seeing, it doesn't move anything. That's focusing. Yes?
Part of
put that explanation in the book.
Huh?
Hard to put that explanation in the book because that gesture says so much.
Oh, yes, I know. Right, that's right. On television, they always tell the crew, lower down because he's doing this all the time. Just to shoot you from... Yes, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that this is off track of where you want to go, and yet I find
No, take me anywhere as far as I'm concerned. Lynn can say it's off the subject. Go ahead.
Policewoman.
Yes.
I find myself dwelling on that early example you gave about the client who said, am I the active one? Or
Yes, yes.
I'm like pondering that.
Yes,
When Mike
yes.
answered that.
Yes.
And as I reflect on it, I notice that in myself, I feel defensive, imagining you saying, I forget now what you said you might have said. You're putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
I feel imagining myself as the client.
Even that doesn't work, right?
Very judged. And
Oh, yeah, right. You're right. Well, what could I have said? You want to hear from me about that? Would that have been okay?
I think what comes to me in the moment, just speculative,
Yes, say.
is you actually being silent and sitting with yourself and seeing what genuinely, authentically emerges for you to say. So feeling your presence more than hearing how you verbally respond.
Well, I'm sure that's what I did, but I came away not. But it's such an intricate little turn thing.
Or even something about what you
Yeah.
said here.
Oh, I agree with what you're implying. No, wait, and you said that over here from here too. Because the puzzle brings home the difference between the words and the interaction, I keep using that example, okay? But I don't want the example to say it's terribly important what words you use, because I don't believe that, and now I see what you
I
meant.
was trying to be curious, not put him on the spot. I wasn't trying to sort of turn the question in a way to make him
Yeah,
on the spot.
yeah.
But to really be curious, what was this about
Yeah,
for him?
it's really true that I agree with you, that anything that would sort of let me be more alive or show me or whatever, even looking stuck or whatever, would be better than to solve this philosophical problem here verbally. That isn't really important.
You have an illustration in your book that I love,
Oh.
which is the client saying, "Nobody understands me."
Yes, right.
I'm living in this world without anybody understanding me. And if the therapist says, "Well, don't I understand you?" then of course nobody understands. But
Right.
if the therapist says, "Nobody understands you, including me. I'm not.
Yes.
There's something I'm not
Yes.
getting here."
Yes.
Then
the client is being
interaction-
understood.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
a very nice
Yes,
illustration
yes.
of the relationship being a doing,
Yes.
not a saying.
And there, I think it is important to reflect pretty often. And I don't mean that in any formal way. It doesn't matter how you do it. But it seems to me pretty often important for the therapist to verbalize what they're understanding from what the client is saying, the crux of it, the point of it, especially the touchy part of it. Not everything, just the part, words like ashamed or guilty or upset or tricky things like whenever she does that, I don't know what to do and I always feel I should know what to do or whatever. To say some of those back is vital. Otherwise, it stays too general. So there I think the words are important, as it happens. To be able to say back, you feel like nobody really understands you, including me. I said it, Ugh. Yeah,
In
yeah.
that,
Job to mention that it's 1:45.
Aha.
thank you. In that, I just wanted to say, in that, including me, there's something that's wonderful about that illustration because the person can't quite say
Yes, you
directly
don't.
to the therapist, you're letting me down too, and so you're furthering what the person is trying to say, what
Yes,
they're trying to
yes,
get. You're making
yes.
this implicit more
Yes, yeah.
more alive in the room and giving
Yes,
permission for it.
absolutely. And what matters is that that more comes from inside more than that person has heard themselves think, say, before. What matters is what comes. So when I say something and it doesn't fit, and the person's face scrunches up sort of, and they don't know where I get that, I say, oh, I see, that isn't right, you know. And after a while, my clients do this. When I start a sentence wrong, they say, and I say, oh, yeah.
I had this, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I had this thought if you said, hey, what's it to you? To the client.
What's it to you? Yeah, that's right.
Where
That's
that takes you. Like, you're actually very equal. If you said something,
It's real.
it doesn't give you...
absolutely, and I totally agree with that. This you also meant. So please don't let my little puzzle sound like it's terribly important what words you use. If you spontaneously said, you know, why the hell are you asking me that? If you're the kind of person who speaks like that, you know, or if you're, you know, more shy gentleman, you might say, why are you asking me that? Or something. But it doesn't matter as long as it's you. And that's an important thing. Maybe we could stop with that. Also, we agreed so deeply. It's really important to let yourself show. It's vastly more important than how good or bad or neurotic or stable or whatever else you may be. It's important to have another person there. And if you're the only person there, you better be there. And it doesn't really matter very much. Therapy doesn't depend on how good you are or how anything you are, how wise you are, how smart you are. If it takes 3 times and then you understand it, that's fine. You just want to understand it, that's great, because nobody else does, you know. So if the client feels that you want to understand and it takes you several turns, that's fine.
I want to sort of underscore that because it's a different principle. In a way, it comes from a different tradition than the psychoanalytic tradition, which we've renovated since, of neutrality and objectivity and abstinence. Now analysts don't believe that anymore, but there's still that sort of hanging in the air of, oh, I should be neutral, I should be a blank screen. And,
Well, there's now we can start arguing, and I'll be on the opposite side. I think there is a place for neutrality, and what were the other 2 words you said? Neutrality, objectivity, and what?
abstinence.
And abstinence. I think there's a place for that. It's just that it's further back. It's like, I want to be here, and I want to be visible, and I worked on not covering up.
Well,
So
let me
I'm pretty
say the
visible.
rest of the
But
sentence and then
yeah, but you don't
we
mean
can
that I
put
would
it.
jump on
Yes.
the client because they like Bush or because they're telling me some experience that I can't right away appreciate. There I would still have my old,
There,
no,
yes.
stay neutral and make
Yes,
room,
yes,
and
yes.
this is not about politics, so it doesn't matter what and this person is different than you are, and that's still, but you didn't mean to get rid of those things.
No, no.
Oh, okay.
No, just to update them a little bit. But just the principle of being a blank screen is really different than a principle of transparency. And the
Yes,
transparency
yes, sure.
that you come from, that principle, is a
Right.
principle of let the other person see your process, and that the more open you can be and the more you can show your reactions in the moment and not hide them, and of course not in a way that's imposing them, but in a way that's available. It's a certain kind of emotional availability. That is what's helpful, rather than being inscrutable. You want to be transparent. And of course, neutrality in the
In
sense
the other
of,
place, sure.
in the other way, of course, is always important. I think of neutrality as being particularly important in terms of the relationship that we've talked about in these workshops between what you called in your paper the client and the client's client, the self and the inner self, or the feeling self. And there, it's so important to be neutral, to not take sides. It's sort of like working with a couple, where you're not going to take sides either for or against one or the other of these two selves that are trying to express themselves.
Oh yeah, but there's this third party, which is a superego attacker, and there I can take sides.
Well, it's actually interesting because there's sort of the, Anne Weiser Cornell talks about sort of empathizing with the, even that, to sort of.
Well, I think,
understand
yes, I think it's an
what that's about and what
Right.
the underlying feeling is.
Yeah, no, she's right there, but it's a more advanced stage
Mhm.
when you want to interview your superego and say, well, what the hell is behind this now? And who's suffering and who's defensive and who's threatened back there. Every macho has a defensive one behind it. But in the beginning, no, there I get in there and I'm trying to say, well, this is stupid, and I say, yeah, but you were just trying to say, because clients so typically attack, the phrase is attack themselves, but isn't really true. This interject attacks them just when they're trying to get in touch with something. Trying to really feel it, and then comes this air attack. Now I really feel something. Well, never mind that. That's just your response to the attack. You were just trying to say this. So there I get in between. But yes, I totally agree that if it's the conversation, sometimes I say focusing is a conversation between the head and the body. And there I'm neutral, of course, like you. Like, oh yes, on the one hand you're thinking this and this, on the other hand you're feeling, sure.
Any other comments, and then we're going to invite somebody to work with Gene. But let's just have a couple more comments or questions or thoughts.
My comment is, or question as well, I guess. Through your training, you've learned a lot about helping the client to feel not only understood, but that somebody can put their finger on some things that may have happened. And I'm just wondering what your reaction is.
I find that on that kind of thing, clients are so different, one from the next. I mean, one client I would just consistently do nothing but listening, and then if I said the slightest thing, I've spoiled it. Either they have to stop everything and explain to me why that's not exactly right, or they tell me 3 weeks later that I did this bad thing to them. You see, whereas other clients expect that from me and are right there. So that often one of the transcripts I printed, because it delights me so, there's this very shy and close, with major sort of dimensions of problems, so it's very touchy. And I say, having heard a great deal about her father, I say, has that got to do with your father? And she says, I'm so glad you asked me because it's my mother. See, so I feel like that bears out what you're saying. That in putting a question or putting my finger on something, I don't have to be right. That's not why I'm doing it. I need it so that something will come from them. And so if my questions are understood in that spirit, then they help. And yeah, so sooner or later I'll say something smart and get that other effect, but I don't think that's so important. In fact, I can, with a client who knows me, I can say 9 things in a row that are wrong, and when I say the 10th thing, I get enormous credit. Oh, that's so wonderful and huge and everything else. So yes, but they vary a lot. And then also if somebody goes around in circles, talk in circles, then I can do almost anything in the hope of getting through there. Whereas if they're right now looking down there, then I don't want to interrupt that. And as a client, I find, oddly enough, many therapists that I have worked with in a partnership and also as a client are the other way around. Just when I'm down there touching it finally, they want to tell me what it is. But if I get stuck, and I've been there before and I get nothing but old stuff that I know already, and I look up and say I need an input, they say, why? And if I say why, they say you're such a controlling client. So to me, it's yes and no, in all the, yes.
Do you Because
Sure.
I find the more that I'm working this way, it kind of goes against anybody getting angry with me because I'm more and
So
more
nice, yeah,
nice, yes.
Yeah.
And so in there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wondered about that.
I think it's a problem, but not quite the way you were saying. People get mad at me all the time. So, yeah, well, I do enough things wrong without trying. You know, to my mind, you're foolish if you deliberately do something to elicit something, because you know sooner or later I do enough things wrong, and people who need to get angry get angry. You know, often for things that are so small that you don't even notice, except that it's important then to say back, "Oh, I see. Yeah, I did do that," or "That was dumb," or whatever it is. But the important thing is that you're, you know, that we're now like this. And not to be patronizing about the anger and say, I'm so glad you could get angry. But here we are. You know, you're angry and I can stand it, but where do we go from here and stuff like that. But it is true. It is true, not for people who have to get angry, but in more generally that being so nice is a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I'm worried about that a little because I have people getting angry at me less the more I'm working this way.
Well, some of that is just good because they get angry, you know, in a useless way because it isn't working for them. And sure, you try to use that, and if that's a big thing for them, then it's fine. But if it isn't, then it's distractive. So, what else? What do I do about it? I don't find it a large problem. Oh, well, I do something, I guess. I pick it up faster than I would if people got angry at me all the time. I pick it up faster. Like Lynn said, you know, and me.
Right.
I pick it up faster.
Thinking that too, that's
Right?
a nice illustration of picking up on
Yeah, quickly. Like
the
if
implicit anger.
if my client says, you know, men don't understand this, I know very well that I'm one of those, and I'll say so, you know,
Or
and
therapists
draw
are
some
all
of that.
into it,
Yeah, and I'll draw some of that. I'll say, well, that's good if we have that between us now. You know, we can really work on it if we have it here in the room. I say things like that, and then if the client says, "How are we going to work on it?" I say, "I don't know, but we'll see." You know, it's here. So I do things. You're right. I do something about it. I try to make sure pretty soon that the client experiences that they can get mad at me, that I can stand that.
The feeling of welcome, of whatever is there, I think is a big part of this approach. That if it's anger or disappointment
Yeah.
or despair or whatever is there.
If it's welcome, yeah, except anger is this funny exception where if you welcome it, you're patting them on the head and the anger didn't reach you. So I wouldn't say, I welcome your anger. I would say, oh, good, we have it here now, and show that I can stand it, that I didn't fall apart or get hurt. When I'm so nice, that's the point you're making. And there is a problem with it.
It's probably who you are. I mean, but some
Yes.
way you probably
Yes.
don't lend yourself as much to the so nice as someone else might. But the whole
Yes.
process
Yes,
is very nice.
yes, yes.
Who would like to work with Gene for a few minutes? This will be,
There's somebody.
somebody right away. Come right up. I'm gonna, we're just gonna have like a 15-minute
So when I work with somebody, I forget about everybody else. So take care of yourself. If you want to go out, I won't notice. That's fine with me. Somebody will be out.
feel abandoned.
Right. Well, I invite you not to worry about them either. Whoop. That's a good dance.
I think she wanted to do something with the mic.
Yeah, there's time. Lynn said they should watch out and look at our broader living that we're going to be doing.
Thank you. So are we?
So do we start? Will you tell us when it's? Oh, we already started. All right, fine. Okay, so hello.
Hi. So, am I just kind of walking into a session
Yes,
with you?
you're walking into a session with me, but you can use it any way you want.
Well, I put my hand up quickly because I'm in the middle of something that's very alive. for
Okay,
me.
so it's there for you already.
Yeah.
Great.
And that is a lot of I feel like something was ripped out of me, actually.
Okay, so that's like the name of it. Something was ripped out of you. And allow that swelling up in you, allow that to come. Whatever that is, tears or whatever. Something was ripped out of you.
It's interesting because I was planning on telling you a phrase about the circumstance. And as soon as you reflect that back to me,
You don't need
it
to.
seems they're
Right.
totally irrelevant.
Right. Right.
Just the sense of hollowness or emptiness.
So the ripped out, it left a hollow place or an emptiness.
I'm noticing the emptiness in my chest,
Yes.
and I'm having another line of conversation that's, I haven't done focusing work specifically a lot, but I've done other kinds of work, and I feel like I'm using the language too readily.
Using
I
the
get a little-
language.
Yeah. I got a little self-critic that came up,
Oh,
like I'm
oh,
not
oh,
I'm not a good
I see.
example.
Oh, I
'cause-
see. Oh, yeah, right, right, right. No, I'll do another demonstration to make a good example. No, this one's just for you. I see, that interrupted there. But actually you were for a moment with your, with here,
Yeah.
and an emptiness, or that's what you called it, was there. Something was there. A hollow.
Yeah. It's a ripped out feeling. Like it's
Ripped
a
out is
hollow
still
that-
the best word for it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see.
It's a hollow that wasn't a hollow before.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And so I feel, as I
Yeah.
explore it, I feel
Yeah.
this longing for it to be whole again. And at the same time, I feel like it'll never
Yes,
be whole
okay.
again.
And I'll say that to you, back to you, but very slowly so that you can just be there.
Okay.
It's like there is a longing for it to be whole again. And also some conviction, oh, it will never be whole again.
Yeah.
And that's where it is right there. And again, if your tears come, they're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then-
it's the part of
Yeah.
feeling like it'll never be whole
And
again.
then that's the part that wells up. I see, oh, it will never fix, it will never be whole again.
And so then I want to figure out how to fix it, but
Oh, yeah.
what do I do when I know there's no way to fix it?
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So part of you, yes, and welcome the tears if you can. They're welcome to me. I don't know if they are to you, but
It's okay.
if they can, that's right, right. And it's in that place that feels like, no, that'll never fix.
Right.
It never fill. It
Never
will
be whole
never be
again.
whole again.
Yeah.
That, again, the right words are, it will never be whole again. It will never be whole again. That's where that is. And then part of you wants to fix it, but then it seems like there is no way to fix it, or there's no way to work on it, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so then,
Yeah. So what
Then
does
what do you
one do
do?
here? Yeah, right.
my answer is kind of, well, you go around going through the motions of your day as if it was whole, so you can try to keep your life up, but in
Sure,
fact, it's not whole.
Sure, no, that's not, that's true, but it's not what you need, right? It's like, yes, I'll keep my life going, and yes, I know how to do that, but that's not what this needs.
That's right.
And then we can yes, and again, let it through if you can. Yes, and we can very quietly, we don't know yet what could possibly do anything for here,
Right.
what it needs. Nothing you can think of fits there. It's just to say, we don't yet know anything that it needs, or that would help it, or that would make it whole. We don't know anything.
That's interesting when you say we don't know. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't. That's a new one for me.
How come? I didn't really understand how come that's new.
Because I feel recognized in the pain,
Yes.
and I don't feel crowded in it, but I also don't feel alone in it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
I still feel like it's mine to be with, but
Yes. Yes.
doesn't
and-
have the added
right,
dimension of
right,
isolation.
Yes, and it feels like that to me. It feels like, well, you're saying you don't know, and of course I don't know, and here
Yeah.
we are,
Yeah,
so we don't know.
right.
We're working on it. And it moves you in some way that you're not alone. That it is
Well,
a we.
it's interesting because I often feel like it's a sort of a core thing for me about feeling uncared about or not understood. And when you say the we, it's not like I feel flooded with caring.
Yeah,
It's
of
not-
course. It's not that.
But
It's
it's
just
also not feeling cared
right,
about.
right. I get that very well.
You
It's
do?
like, oh, care is this huge thing coming at you. Never mind. It's not that. It's just that we are working on it here as a we or together. It's just not uncared about, not all alone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's more like not uncared about than it is
Yeah,
cared about.
Cared about, right.
So it creates not an it almost doesn't create a new big feeling to deal with.
Yeah, that's I understood.
It
right.
just yeah.
Right.
Huh,
It's
just
not
creates a
an
little more
additional
space.
thing to.
Right.
It's just this that you're not having to be uncared about and not
Yeah.
having to be all alone in the all alone sense. But it is, yeah.
That's right.
And there's time now. I would say you don't have to say something every minute.
Okay.
You can, of course, but I'm just saying there's time to be.
Mm.
If
Not
that-
uncared about. Time to be not uncared about.
Well, that, but yes, I meant it more generally than that. We assume that you're supposed to say something next, and that's what I was trying to get out of the way.
Hmm. Well, I noticed in my inner process, just how I'm sitting, there's this fascinating airplane over there. And I was tempted to talk about that.
Sure.
And then I thought, well, what if I looked back inside?
Yeah, with me you can, of course. It would be like taking a break or something that you might want.
It's true. But there's a acknowledging the ripped out feeling.
Yes.
It's interesting because earlier I was feeling something wrong or missing or pain about myself about it. And in speaking it, I feel more accepting of it.
Yes. Like the main thing is here, this feeling of ripped out.
Right.
And there isn't as there was before, some kind of self-critical or some kind of additional
That's right.
different issue.
Right. There's just more interest.
In it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like not so
And-
much trying to fix
right,
it,
Right.
but more,
As oh, this is here.
yeah, more relationship with it.
Like you're willing to let it breathe or be or listen to it or care about it or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
That place. Not right.
Hmm. So I'm wanting to see if it has something to say to me.
Yes, okay, that's nice. You're giving it room in case it wants to say something to you. Yes.
Of course, it's saying something along the lines of help.
Yes, okay. So it is very much saying, and allow that through if you can, is very much saying, I need help, help, help.
I notice when you say allow it through, because
Yeah.
I'm fairly comfortable with crying, actually.
Oh, good.
That I start to think about the fact that I'm
I
crying.
don't have to say it anymore.
Right.
Thank
Shut
you.
up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love clear instructions. So that was interrupting you, and you were saying, oh, what would it like to say to me? And the first thing it wanted to say is help.
Yeah,
I
that's
need
right.
help.
That's right. It's a very, now it again feels like a very lonely place.
Yes. It's a lonely place.
Yeah.
It's used to being a lonely place.
I don't know if it's used to it or
I
not.
think that's adding something that isn't, that's not right.
Yeah.
Just it's a lonely place.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to have time in it.
See how much time is wasted by a little word I added. Never mind all that. It's a lonely place.
Yeah. Like the help is a little, it's like a good day when it feels like it's worth the bother
It
shouting
can
help.
actually ask for help. Shout help is more relational than it usually is.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, I see. In some way you're glad it's saying help rather than just
That-
silent in the alone
That's right.
place.
There's like a little
Yeah.
more hope there.
More, yes, yes, yes.
Now I'm feeling a little self-conscious.
Okay.
In about 15 minutes.
Because that was so true, or what? Never mind. Wrong question. Wrong question. Okay, so we're going to stop pretty soon, but I'd like you, if you would, to stop sort of slowly, gradually, gently, until it says we can stop, sort of just let's be quiet for a minute or two or three. They don't care about 3 minutes or 2 or 1. Or so you could be, because you just got there where even that it says help is a little bit more hopeful than it's all sunk, all alone place.
Something happened where it said help and then got a little distant from that again, got scared. And that's where I got self-conscious
Ah, yeah.
and started being aware of being new to this group and having asked a question and felt reasonably good about what people might think of me given what I asked.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
now, it's not even like I don't even care about the people there really. It's just
Right,
internal,
right.
like,
Right.
what have I done?
Yes, which takes you away, of course, from here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I probably also have a good internal clock. I probably had a sense that it was.
There was time or something. Right. So then I'm just invested in that you can find that again by yourself, or that we didn't just abruptly leave it, that we can say, and I don't know, since I might not see her again, that you would say that you can come back to that spot, of course.
I think my first thought is, how would I do that without somebody doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't have immediately set up. So, since my therapist just canceled our appointment for tomorrow because he's sick. So, but I could go home and I could write from that place. And that would reconnect me to it.
That would reconnect you to it. And then you did say there is not another person? Like, I didn't hear your therapist went off for...
Oh, no, we just had an appointment tomorrow, but he's sick.
Oh, okay, it's
No,
not
there's
that
just not
bad.
something
It's not
immediate.
that bad.
Yeah, no.
Okay,
no,
okay.
I'm
All right,
fine.
all right. So it feels like we can stop.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you. Maybe I
Yeah.
could just sort of notice people.
Yes, yes, take your time.
Oh, they look very benign.
Yeah.
Do you want me
good.
to stay here or go back, or
I
I don't
don't
know how
know.
you handle this?
Oh, yes, I know. I like the person that I work with to be left in peace. And so if we talk about this, to me that's different than working. So you would have the prior right to say anything you wanted to, or nothing, as these things come up. But I wouldn't like everybody to jump on her and say, "Now, how was that for you?" And whether just have peace and be with yourself and go out if you want to, or anything. And then if you do want to say something, of course, you have more right to say something than anybody else. Is that okay with you? And the other, and yeah, sit somewhere.
Okay. Well, I feel fine. I don't know if I want to be approached individually,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Will you leave her in peace?
but if the group, for some reason, it's part of
The
the
whole
topic
group
of
wants
how
to
this
know
works,
something,
then
they
that's
can
fine.
ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a nice distinction.
Well, aren't I going back?
Oh, yeah, just in case, okay.
Oh, you want me
Yeah.
to keep it on back there?
No,
Okay.
let her be just one more person in the group
Okay.
from here.
You get it back?
Because then she,
No, I don't think we need it.
see that,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, yes.
yes, thank you,
Thank you
for
very
sure.
much.
The other thing I think I like to do is just stand up and maybe stretch or not and sit down again, to make a distinction between the space in which we work and this discussion space that we now have. And you don't have to get up or anything, but if enough of us get up, we make a distinction.
Is this okay, Charlotte? Put it on? I'd like to take a couple of breaths. Okay, so what did you notice? What were your reactions? What did you feel as this work was going on? How was the living a different living, a broader living? Anything particularly about the relatedness?
Well, I think it was a wonderful example of Jean being very, very there and very nice, and still being able to be yelled at when the anger came up. You know.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was a great, as you
right.
say, example
Yes.
of itself. you know.
Yes, yes, that's right, actually. They say I like clear instructions, and it's true that I do. It's like, okay, now I know not to do that. She doesn't need that. And it feels like that.
That seemed like an important relational move, that the two had worked together to make that possible, so that that she felt comfortable to say, "Shut up," and Jean felt comfortable to say, "I like
Right,
clear instructions,"
right.
and that was an accomplishment.
Yeah,
in a
it's true.
certain way.
Our connection grew the whole time. So by that time, we both knew that we were both okay with it before we had to indicate it. You know.
Yeah, it would have been very different if the beginning she sat down and she said, "Shut up." It would have had a very different feel.
I was struck by how quickly the space seemed to kind of open up around the two of you, and from two strangers it became very much
Yes.
something you were in together and not just
Yes.
her pain or
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
you could
Yes.
just feel
Yes. Yes.
the space.
Yes. But there I would like to say something I usually say when I demonstrate, not this quick, but I usually say it eventually, which is in a group like this, working with somebody who has experience with their insides, it's almost everything you do is so much easier and so much more immediately there. So, you know, you mustn't think that I have this experience with the next client that walks in the first 15 minutes. I'm just as lost and tense and do dumb things as anybody else does. That's clear, isn't it? I just wanted to say it. Given that, yes, I come and I'm very ready for that. And then if the other person is also able to have that, then it happens very quickly.
I mean, Ariel came right away with something.
Yes,
worked out.
yes, of course.
Right there.
Of course, I didn't have to do any what does it make here, and I didn't have to do hardly anything of that. But given you understand that difference, it's very true that when I sit down, I say, oh, and then I sort of am ready for that. And then if the person is totally different and something utterly, all right, I can get with it.
Are there any special things you look out for when you're confronting a novice like that? Are there
Things to look out for when?
any particular things you keep in mind when you're dealing with somebody new who doesn't have this kind of internal awareness or internal experience?
No, but I do have it all. I feel like I put it all here. And I have it if I need it. Everything I know, sort of like. So I'm okay.
So would you say the other way around, that the experience for you is almost the same either way, with someone who is inexperienced and someone who is experienced?
The way I start is the same, yeah. The way I start is the same. And then if it develops, well, good. But if something completely different happens, then I might have to go grab one of these things and say, all right, now let's see. Keep your balance and reflect everything carefully, and or some other thing, you know. Show that you can stand this. It's a different dimension. We all have our bag over here. It's just I don't believe in having my bag of tricks in between. I don't want it in between. I want over here where I can grab it, you know, and I can
like that metaphor.
do all those things. Yeah, I can pretend I'm okay when I'm not, but right here I just want to be, and yeah.
Well, I noticed right away, she said, it feels like something's ripped out, and so you said that's the name for it.
Yes.
It helped her say that, okay, but that's not the experience, that's the
I don't know
name.
if it helped her, but I needed to say it in the spirit of, well, it's almost a funny, tricky thing. The simple thing is, I wanted her to know that, well, those were just 3 words, and I know that there's a whole big thing under there.
Right, you're pointing to the bigger.
So that's why I said, you know, I was trying not to respond just to the words, but to that thing. And then, oddly enough, there's a second wrinkle behind that, which is, that is always so clear to me, and so many people don't understand that. That if I say, oh, ripped out, you know, and I get all that from 3 words, people look at me and say, what? You know, and it's actually, I did, in fact, in a demonstration, I remember in Toronto or Montreal, I don't know if you were there, that did happen. A woman sat down and the first thing she said is, well, I'm sad. And so I said, oh, sad, or something. And then she looked at me and she said, oh, you look so sad. Many years ago, that wouldn't have that, you know, I would have fallen apart there, so, inside at least. But no, that to me, I was just, you know, it amused me. I said, oh, you're seeing my sadness. My sadness has anything to do with it. You know, get that out of here. Because it was kind of projecting. So ever since maybe, I don't know if that's the incident or not, but I have this feeling like, well, I can feel a great big thing under there, and I don't have to know more about it to feel it. But I don't, you know, you only said 3 words, something like that. So all that was in there.
It seemed like most of what you did was what we would call mirroring her. But the thing that you did that was a little bit different was when you introduced the we. Because she didn't introduce the we, you did. You offered her something. And once you offered her the we, then there was the feeling of wanting help. It seemed to me that before there was a we, there wasn't the wanting of help. So it was sort of interesting to me, you know, about when you were pacing and when you were leading, and if you were aware. But as I say it, can you see how the thing moved along once you introduced the we?
Yeah, I see your point. Wait, let me mirror you. And say, I see, yes, of course, I see your point. Had I not said we, the interactional help might not have come. Right, and you're connecting those.
Yes,
and I see that.
Somehow the we became a kind
Right.
of invitation for the part that wants help.
But I didn't introduce the we, it just came.
Right.
Because that's what it is. It's like she's saying, I don't know that anything could, and I don't know either, so then we don't know. So I didn't have a deliberate sense. Now, sometimes I do. Sometimes when a person is working on their hurt child place, then I have learned not to say, you know, you care about her. It has to be we. So there I do have that, but not in this place, I know.
Right.
But I do have something else, and I'm trying to see if I can verbalize it. It's like where you have mirroring, which of course is what it is. What I have is I want to keep company, sort of more. I want to be with it. And I don't care how I do that. So if it fails, then I do something else. And it's, if I'm
Right, you're saying the interaction comes, before you said the word we, the interaction
Yeah.
was there.
yeah.
Like, in one of the teleconferences, you were talking about, like, the breast is there and the baby goes to it, but they're there, and
Yes.
you were both there, and you were very
Yeah,
there. So
yeah.
the interaction was there, and then the we.
Yeah.
Right.
interaction preceded the
And I want the feeling that I'm there, or that I'm keeping the person company. I don't mean that I'm there, but that the person has me there. So if I have somebody who's staring down, then I may have to say something. I can feel you doing this and this, or I don't know what.
Can I say something about my?
Yeah, you can.
When you said we, I became more present. But the reality was, you and I were in this dialogue, and I'd kind of forgotten, even though I was
Yes,
talking, I'd kind of
yes.
forgotten that you were
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And the place that asked for help inside of me was not experiencing it as asking Jean for help. It was experiencing it as asking myself, like a
Yes.
part of myself for help.
Yes. Yes.
And maybe the we gave a little more space for that, but it didn't feel like it was about the we.
But see, it wouldn't be the word we, it would be how we were there anyway,
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
It also struck me by saying you're the person she's coming to for help because you're the therapist. So I thought there was something about we don't know. It's nice that the therapist doesn't know. You don't know and the therapist doesn't know. It's not setting up that other.
Right, right, right. But it seems obvious.
But it seems obvious.
Yeah, let me see what the difference is. The way you're all saying these things, they would have to be deliberate moves or something, introducing we, admitting that the therapist doesn't know, whereas how could he possibly know? anything. I don't even know what it's about. And I agree with you that allowing that to be overt or is a right thing, is a good thing. I agree. It's just that
It seems to
didn't
me
think
that,
about it.
yes, that most of the relating, as you're saying, is not thought about as a move. And yet it is.
And yet it is, and it's not wrong to
It's a
discuss it
moving
either. It's
forward.
just what we want to
Yes.
do. So I'm a little stuck suddenly. By on the one hand, I want to say, no, I didn't introduce this. No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't do any of those things. On the other hand, that's right.
Yes.
It's,
You didn't.
yeah, yeah,
You.
yeah. If
You
you
did.
allow yourself, it's like what I have conscious is that I want to keep the person company if I can. I want to be there and not mess with them, at least not for a long time, not until I see that they're going in circles or something. I want to keep them company. And so I do that, and then if it's easy, like I have somebody who can, that's okay. So, in fact, it was so nice when you said the thing about it's not a new thing I'm cared, it's that I'm not it's like that. That's
Yes.
that's the feel of it. And then if I can't get there, then I try something else. So, you know, if the person is staring steadily down and I can't get any signal that I'm keeping them company, then I may even say, I'm keeping you company with that. I mean, I can...
Is that because maybe it's too much? And it's
That would-
interesting as to why that is. What is that threatening? What is it about that level of presence that might be?
I don't know. But the way I feel it right away is some people have an enormously thin skin, or at least in certain places, and if you look at them too much, then they lose their inner touch with those places. Like in Japanese culture, you don't look straight at somebody because it's intrusive. But if I'm working with somebody, you know, like I had in the workshop, a Japanese person who there was almost no English, but he indicated to me like, no. And I suddenly said, oh, of course. And it was not a cultural thing. It was the individual fact that while he was working on this, I was not to be so present or something like that. And I said, oh, sure, of course.
Yeah, it's funny because that blows my whole thing about, because I'm seeing the mother. I'm seeing an incredibly attentive attuned
Yeah,
mother.
very
with
much.
The child.
Yes.
With
Yeah.
the Japanese, we know the mothering thing goes on for 7 years. I mean, very well. Maybe things have changed.
No, but they do. But they have a cultural sense that looking right at somebody is understood as invasive, whereas we have the opposite cultural sense.
Right, that's
We feel like somebody's there for us when they're looking at it. They feel like, you know, look over here, so give me room. But what was so interesting to me was that the incident with that man was not cultural. It was that at that point, he couldn't have this direct, and so he sort of said, not this way, this way. And so I said, oh, of course. And I just moved not far, but far enough so that I wasn't, and yeah, that was okay. With the Japanese come to our workshop, sometimes they know almost no English. It's so strange. And yet it all works anyhow. But that's getting off the subject somehow. There are people, right, for whom that's too much presence, forwardness,
Well, actually, I
something
felt
like that.
As you were, I mean, because I was noticing how often you were repeating, and at a certain point when you were repeating the same phrase several times, even though it was gentle, there was a piece of me that felt like saying, will you be quiet?
Yeah, yeah. But I think if I had been working with you, I hope I would have picked up the gradual feeling of
I don't think that's what she was feeling.
No, she wasn't.
Completely,
No,
there was a-
No, I was
No,
addressing this question,
that-
why
that's-
would
that's
some
my
people
point.
feel like that? And
Because I think
I was saying, I'm one.
that whole interconnection, there was
Yes.
I thought there was a dynamic interconnection.
Yes, yes, yes,
You know,
yes,
how
yes.
you immediately
Right, work for me.
gave
Yes.
so much, and I think your
Yes,
response,
absolutely.
so I just felt it as a beautiful, beautiful waves upon waves that just they envelop one another. I just
Yeah.
felt that it kept growing.
But now I feel this is very helpful. What you're saying and what you're saying together, off of what you were saying, I think is very helpful. That don't go home and think that everybody lets me be like that. They don't. And I pick it up if the welcome isn't constantly reiterated, I'm much too shy to do something like that in the face of somebody who's I can keep quiet and I can sit way back and I can do whatever. So you're right. That would be a very extreme thing to do with a person who didn't constantly renew the contract, sort of, right? I don't mean you, but anybody.
I think we're also getting at this thing that we had called the doing and the saying, that it's not just about what's being said, but it's about this dance, and the individuals make a particular kind of unique team, and the therapist is responding to that person in all kinds of ways. And as a therapist or as a mother, you're not thinking about all of those ways, but you're picking up many, many, many cues, your whole body, your whole sensibility, everything that you know and are is active in the interaction, and only a little teeny bit of it is intellectually, are you actually thinking, oh, I'll say this or I'll do this, but that sense of how close can we be is a big part of what you're picking up. When does the person need space? When do I come in closer?
And I would want just as much credit for being sensitive if you had seen me pull back, because I wasn't getting that kind of feedback.
And I'd like to be clear that the quote-unquote better way of doing it is not the necessarily being close, but the being mindful of
Yes,
what it
exactly.
is that the person
Exactly.
needs.
Yes.
That's right.
Even
Yes.
though it works
That's right.
beautifully
That's
here.
right. That's
Yes.
right. And
Should be
what the
close.
person
That's right.
needs is immediate. You don't have to think this is the kind of person who would need that or something. You just do it, and then you see that it doesn't take, or it's painful or something. So okay, you don't do it.
And you feel it in your body.
Yeah.
But how would you make the difference between the exact same need for distance, which might be positive for the person, who use that term, versus that need for distance that might be negative? What would you listen for and do yourself?
Well, you would see it on their face and body as you were saying something that you experienced as warm and receiving and all that, and that would be enough to knock that out right out of your body. Just one wince would be enough, or one backing, or one, and you see that, oh, it didn't land. But you don't have to think that. Your body is already pulling back.
But is there a case where the pulling back would be received by your client in a gratified way, but would ultimately not be benefiting that person? Would be a repetition of some negative sense about being...
Well, certainly in the first 15 minutes, you wouldn't worry about that. You might, after a year, you might worry about it.
How would you feel? Is there a way to discern the difference in yourself?
Yeah, well, if a person is stuck, then you examine yourself, don't you? I mean, we all do. Good. What is it that I'm doing or not doing, or something like that? Is this person, can they get mad at me? Am I enveloping them? Am I this or am I that or the other thing? But that isn't what you meant.
No.
You meant in the moment. How would you know?
Could I ask, are you talking about someone where you might feel being shut out, like kept away?
defensively distancing?
Well, yes, but if the sense of, I don't like the word defensive, but if I'm protecting myself by distancing, and that's gratifying to me, and when you distance yourself,
You as the clinician?
I would, no, I as the patient.
As a patient.
Yeah.
Then you would feel shut out.
Yeah.
Feel good
I
about it, but
yes.
in fact, I'm reliving some old trauma.
Yes, no, but that really is the typical case that you're saying, isn't it? I mean, you're putting it in extremes. But the typical case really is that a person is how they are, and so they're also what they want help with, right? And to my mind, it would be a mistake not to gratify. I mean, that concept doesn't work for me. If you want to connect with me, you got to take me where I am, you know? Like I said to a client many years ago, I remember, she kept holding her breath whenever she was close to something. And I said, well, if you hold your breath, then I don't think you can feel it. And she said to me, no, you don't understand. I'm holding my breath so I can stand to feel it. And I think defenses are all like that. That unless you're willing to live with the defense the person puts up, you become useless. Because they can't do without the defense. So you live with them, with the defense, and then if you live and if you receive, then right away the process is different and the defense is something else because it becomes interactional. So I wouldn't be afraid of gratifying a person's tendency to pull back. Or another way to say that, I had a client who for a long time always came in, hello, hello, and then she would just sort of sit the whole hour, some of it in silence, but most of it talking, but always looked down and down. And it was about maybe, I understood that perfectly, but she suddenly became unsure at one point, and so she said, you do know that I can talk to you like this, don't you? And I said, of course I know, you know. Of course I know. She was holding 2 jobs and telling me all about it. So, of course I know. But that experience lets me say more clearly now to people, oh, I know that you're trying to get in touch with that place in there that can't speak. I know you can speak. And that's again the defensive.
What I'm getting to say is that judgment is unnecessary.
I don't think so. That's right. That's right. All that's necessary is when it doesn't land right, you don't keep doing that.
It seems to me there's a spontaneity in the process that is, in the way we're talking about it, we're almost trying to pin it down and name it.
And we need to do that.
Especially because it's you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if we're going to learn it, we're going to find out the right
Yeah,
way.
absolutely, absolutely. I was trying to avoid sounding like you shouldn't be. I mean, that's what we're here for to talk about, is to analyze it. But then in the process, at least once you, well, it's like when you play any sport, like when you're bowling, they tell you to hold your right arm stiff. And as long as you keep thinking about that, you don't make any kind of score. Your body has to absorb that, so you automatically keep your arm stiff, and then you do better than before. And so the way we're talking is absolutely right. But it's when it gets second nature that, so it is important. And I like the questions, but I have to keep going in and saying, well, you're not thinking about mirroring, and you're not but you know, I learned it way back as a practice. It isn't as if I had, but by now I'm not thinking about mirroring. I'm not. So what are you thinking about? So then I find that, oh yeah, I'm thinking about keeping the person company, and that's often not easy. Here it was totally easy, but it's so often not easy. It's like I try to do it, and they think it's something else, and then they're not there, and then they didn't see it, and then they're all alone sitting there 5 minutes, and I'm wondering, are they doing something, or are they stuck? And then maybe I cough so I don't get lost, even, you know, make a noise so that...
It stays alive. That's for
yeah.
me, the big problem not problem, but the biggest obstacle in trying to get it, whatever it is of focusing, is to do with my image of the word focusing. You said that the words are always wrong.
Yeah.
So I think the word focusing is wrong.
All wrong, sure.
It sounds like constricting and
sure.
you know, closing in on something.
Sure.
And in fact, it's a very opening process.
Right.
It's slowing
right.
things down and letting it be fuzzy if it
Right,
needs to be.
right, exactly.
So focusing is a funny word for it. But here we are learning focusing from, you know, the one who would be the one to tell us how to do it right, you know.
Yes, sure.
So it's,
Well,
it's ironic.
well, really, it's just an invitation to come into the body. Or little, maybe I get a chance. It's hard in a group of therapists who are so able inside themselves to even show focusing. Like, she was doing it, but she didn't need me to say, what's here, you know? Or can you stay with that, or anything like that.
Now, like being inside of a body doesn't necessarily put in words into feelings, right?
Yes?
It does mean that.
Well, I didn't hear all of what you said.
Being inside is a process of being inside.
Being inside is feeling, not words.
Yeah, but I mean, but if you, sometimes you can put a word into feeling, but it might not be what you're feeling.
Yes.
So it's just basically trying to be in touch with that. And at times you can put words into feelings, but sometimes you can't.
Yes.
But it's just
Yes.
that process.
Yes. No, exactly.
Trying to
Exactly.
reach there, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Reach there,
Now wait.
yeah.
What? Okay. What I would say more than that. That's right. More than that is that people so often mean by feelings, they mean just angry, sad, glad, scared, emotions like that. And where focusing is a little more than you said, but what you said is exactly right. Little more than you said, because if I'm angry or scared or whatever, then focusing is letting that spread out more in here. Because if I'm just angry, then I'm angry, and angry is angry, and if a person doesn't focus, but they're angry, and I say, well, what is more with that, and how does it feel here? They will say, well, I'm angry, that's all. You know, wouldn't you be angry if this happened to you? And they tell me. So feeling is a funny word. But when you say feeling, do you know what I mean? That it's spread, then it's good. Lynn, you would.
What do you do, Gene, when you have, I mean, she was a wonderful person to work with because she immediately talked about the scooped out place. But what do you do with people who don't feel their feelings here,
Yeah,
who
that's right.
think their feelings?
That's right. Maybe the next person I role play, maybe the next person that I work with could be role playing a difficult client like that. That helps me show all the other things, right? Maybe, do you think we could do that?
Sure.
Think of a client who's like that.
Well, I had one more thought
Yeah.
that I just wanted to stick in there because it was on my mind about the we.
Okay.
And I was thinking that the thing that was powerful about the we that became a turning point, even though it wasn't
Yes.
a conscious decision, was something about making the relationship explicit in a way that gives permission. And it seems parallel to that example of, you don't, even I don't understand you, saying to the client that says nobody understands me. And of course, that's there, but then when the therapist puts that into words, it opens something up because it gives permission for that feeling between us, the you and me-ness of it, to be spoken. So when Gene said, we, used the word we, he didn't even notice it, but it was palpable to all of us that made a huge difference because it was
Well,
making
it did in
something
that case,
explicit.
but with the next person, it might not make any difference.
Well,
or it might not be
everything
heard,
is true that way,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
of course,
sure.
absolutely.
Sure.
Charles?
I just wanted to comment on what I thought was a very beautiful moment in the whole interaction, which was that whole play about cared for, not uncared for, and the whole
Yes.
fresh phrase of not
Yes.
uncared for, which
Yes.
is so original and kind of, and it was
Yeah.
the whole playing around what's the experience here of the relationship. I thought all that was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. So that's here, and that's a way in which I'm feeling your presence, but it's not making me have to do anything extra.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I thought that was
Exactly.
a delightful
Exactly. And
part.
right, and why not grasp that instead of saying something general back? And that's something to say. I like to go in and I also appreciate a focusing partner who can do that. I like to go in there and actually take that thing, which you just said so well. It's like this, yes, not alone, yes, care, but not care, you know. These kind of, where it's all fresh. To me, that's a perfect example of what I was trying to say. What comes from there always has this funny quality that it doesn't fit any of the usual categories exactly, and it's this, and you have to, and it's around the corner and down a little, and we, yeah.
That was such a wonderful point. I just want to add a little bit to it. That's the kind of talking about the relationship that is very different than in the example of the tapes that you listen to where they're talking about the therapist or not talking about. It's that intricacy of in the moment, exactly what it is.
And they would never have picked it up anyhow with that classification.
Right. I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody.
Well, it was me actually.
Oh, well, you.
I wanted to sum something up, and Charles really led into it with what he just said. When you asked about, I'm not sure I even heard the whole thing, but how does it relate to living in the broader
Yes.
sense? I'd had this concern before we worked together about something that comes up for me, I think, in other kinds of therapy and counseling, where I kind of long for that same kind of connection in my relationships in life.
Yes.
So in a certain sense, I sometimes wonder what I get out of it if then I go out into the world and look for everybody to be like that kind of nurturing way. And in the way that you were being that had me not uncared for, as distinct from cared for, it didn't trigger that kind of longing and made me feel more inside of myself
Yes.
to go off and to do the next thing, as opposed to inside of that longing to repeat that
Yes.
sense of being cared
Yes.
for. I mean, it seems like it makes sense, right?
Yes.
And did you all understand it that way? Because it was so clear to me that no, this one was the good one, the one that we wanted, where she could breathe and be and have that thing, and the other was going to be a job, and I couldn't tell good job, bad job, but it was clear that yes. There's a gypsy thing where they tell you all about yourself. Oh, in New York it's called a psychic, actually. But there are real psychics too, so I don't want to say that. But the gypsy can tell you all about yourself. You know, she says, right after you come in maybe, she says, you're a person who has many friends, and your face falls, and she says, but very few good ones. And that's what I do. See, that's what I do. And so if I had that good thought that you had, that oh yeah, this is somebody scared with me, so they're bound to be scared, and he says the administration can't trust them, then yeah, I would say something halfway to there. I would say, oh, they're not good people to be. Yeah, right. Well, okay, well, they're not safe people to be. Oh, yeah, well, you don't feel safe there. Oh, yeah. If I keep getting the yes, yeah, then I get in there. And if not, then okay, that wasn't what it was.
That's a new notion, halfway there.
Yeah, yeah, and
I've
then
heard that one.
and then half again, and then half again, so that you can get drawn in or sent out, rather than having to be right. I'm hardly ever right. You know, it would take me a while also to go through all the things that I could imagine.
Test the waters a little bit.
You know, and then, you know, he's been in therapy before, so he knows that he's supposed to act a certain way, and he's not acting the way he's acting. I mean, he's not acting the way he knows he's supposed to act, so there's some degree of freedom involved in his doing just what he wants to do, so maybe that's good, and maybe I'm glad about that, and maybe I don't want to think all those things. I want to, you know, let's say, but if he had said freshly, because it was third hand, but if he said freshly, I've been in therapy before, then I would say, so you have a lot of experience. And if I get a nod, I might say, you know, and it wasn't all good, oh, that's wrong, you know, or whatever. lot of half steps. So I know that my reactions, they are meant to go across, but I may have to work with them a little before I put them. Like dumping on people is not relating. And there's a long story behind that in our personal relationships. Yeah.
That's such an important point, and that would take a whole, maybe next year you'll come back and do a
Yes.
whole thing about that, because there are a lot of very complex moves in what you just said about picking up something that you're reacting to and
salting it away.
Salting it away, but
Yes.
also assuming that there's something, not only that there's something positive in what seems negative in the client or the patient, but
Sure.
there's something positive in what
Sure.
seems negative in you.
Sure.
And then going through a process where you're finding your positive intentionality in the feeling of, oh, well, you whatever that feeling
Right.
is, and then using that as an invitation. There are a lot of different steps to it.
Yes.
But it seems like your own feeling there isn't much of your own feeling in it anymore if you're salting away a lot. But, I mean, then maybe I would worry about kind of watering down the feeling level.
Well, I have this, basically I feel like therapy is so easy compared to my personal relationships. And so a lot of this is like, you know, I mean, therapy is like a vacation for me. Yeah, I get to put all my troubles down and all my relations down, and here's this person, and they're only going to stay an hour, and no matter how bad I do, they're going to go home and they're going to pay me. It's just a breeze. But where I learn the most is in my personal relationships. And I have really learned a lot there that I can then apply in therapy much more easily. So let me just reflect first. This really important point is, aren't you watering down your isn't your reaction, for Christ's sake, tell me something interesting for a change. And by the time I invite this person so kindly to say a little more, haven't I watered it down? And I say no. The point is, and it's in the close relations especially, that if we just say right out what we have there, what the person hears is something completely different, and usually the opposite, or close to the opposite, or something unrelated that may take you 3 months to discover what it even was. So don't say everything out straight if you want a relationship to work.
Is there a middle ground?
No, it isn't middle. It's you ask yourself what you're trying to say, and then when you get that straight, then you say to yourself, how the hell is this person whom I know so well for 35 years ever going to be able to hear that if I say it? See? And then you may wisely decide that there is no way that she's going to hear it that way. So why say it? You're going to be saying something else. Well, if you want to say something else, decide what else you want to say. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you're saying this when in fact what gets across is something else. And then I always use again my experience in Japan. When I'd give a lecture in Japan, I would say something funny and 3 people would laugh. Those are the 3 people who know English. Then the translator would translate it and nobody would laugh. So then I would wonder what he told them. But this is what our relationships are all like. You're getting a reaction to something you didn't say and would never say and probably have never thought or felt. Why do that? See, so my current formula is, if you want to express a whole lot of feelings, then pick one. And then don't say it. See, you all know what I mean, or you wouldn't be laughing. It's so nice. Say half of it, or 1/3 of it, or something like that. And then ask your close person to tell you what they thought you said. Okay? And then when you hear that, give yourself a whole minute or 2 to recover. Because it'll be just like a blow in the stomach. And you sort of have to recover. And you have to say, well, no, that isn't quite what I wanted to say. You know, I see where you got that. Yeah, it's not that you're crazy or anything. I see where you got, I see how it could be put, but I didn't put that very well. And then try again with that little half, right? And then ask again. Now, can you tell me how that landed? I mean, if they know me and I'm a person who mirrors or reflects, then they're not willing to say back, you know, say that back to me. So I have to find some other way to ask for that. So I say, well, you know, tell me how that landed or how that felt. But really what I'm saying is, what do you think I said? And then, okay, the same thing maybe 2 more times or something, until finally, actually, with all this in-between work that you do, they finally heard exactly what you said. And then my current rule is quit! Right there! Don't say another thing. Take your winnings home and live in that good warmth, because there is this moment of warmth when somebody really, really knows you and you really, really know them, and you have this moment of communication. Then just stay with that. No, the rest of the day will be good, and just enjoy that, because it isn't so important to communicate all the rest of what you had there. It's important to have a moment of contact, just like with him here. You know, if we had a moment where we could both sit and we were both together with what we just said, that's what we want. And in therapy, it's just a lot easier, that's all.
I think that's a good note, too.
Sure is.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you.